Let's meeting to order and welcome to all. And Wednesday, February the 2nd, 2022. And as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Will be posted out to our YouTube channel at a later date. So having said that, are there any additional agenda items? Hearing none, we will move to the next point. That is the declaration of conflict of interest. Go ahead, Ken.
I have a conflict with respect to LPRCA 272/21 in the staff approved reports.
That was what, 72-21?
Yeah.
272.
272-21. Okay. Duly noted. We have the minutes of the previous meeting, Board of Directors meeting of January 5th, 2022 on pages 1 through 8. And I have a motion here. That the minutes of the LPRCA Board of Directors meeting held January the 5th, 2022 be adopted as circulated. Do I have a mover? Val and Peter. Is there any discussion? Is there any corrections or omissions? Hearing none, then I'll call for the vote. Those in favor? That's carried. Our next point is the business arising from the previous minutes, which is the proposal for the water sports cable park. And that's in your minutes of 9 to 12, pages 9 to 12. And I believe that Judy is going to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is a follow-up from our meeting in the board meeting in December. So staff, we reviewed the proposal from the Cooks, and as the board asked us to come back with a report. So the report here covers the areas that we have concerns with, and staff are recommending not to proceed with a partnership for the water park, cable park. So some of the key areas of concern are the zoning and regulatory issues, the campground electricity capacity issues, gate control, and then I listed a few other items in the report. So I didn't know if it's quite a lengthy report, so if anyone had any questions, but that's basically the summary of what's in the report.
Is there any discussion about this report or any questions about this report? Go ahead, Ken.
So, Judy, I mean, I see why the reasons why not. Are there mountains that can be climbed here, or is this just, do you think this is just dead before it even gets off the ground? I mean, is there, I mean, if there's an opportunity to look at, possibly some alternatives or some things that, where you bring some issues up that are legitimate issues, but are they some that can be overcome, or do you just feel that it's just a non-starter?
Yeah, when we look at it all and together, it's really a non-starter from staff's point of view. With the additional, there is some additional electricity capacity there, but we'd like to reserve that for some future expansion, possibly down the road for the campground, because we could use the hydro to service another 14 sites, like another 200 amp panel box. And also, we just feel that there's other opportunities in the park that better fits our vision for that park. We had expanded the passive use on that side already with a dock, and we made a well, we connected to the kayak and canoe trails right into Waterford downtown. So we created portage for people to go. So that area, we have started to use it for our own customers. And we're getting a lot of uptake and additional day use as we improve that park. So we see the issues, like there's a lot of operational issues at the cable park was there, as we're not the operator of that park. And it would be, if we were able to overcome the zoning and the regulatory issues, we just feel there's still better use of our resources at that park for the vision that we have, more of a passive use for that lake.
Peter, you got a question?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to, I guess, to the general manager. I understand some of the objections that LPRCA is putting up against this, and I understand the rationale behind that. The thing that really bugs me about this is that back in 2016, these folks had approval already. And it seems to me that by telling them yes then, and 6 years later saying no, we're kind of reneging on an agreement that was put into place. And so that just kind of rubs me the wrong way.
Can I comment on that? Can I comment on that?
Sure, Mr.
Peter, one of the things that you have to keep in mind here, that we had a very, very difficult situation with getting hydro into the Waterford North Park. And we fought with Ontario Hydro and the local electrical contractor, and we finally, I think it took 2 years, if I remember correctly, for us to get adequate hydro to that site. Now, with the hydro now finally installed and serviceable to us, we would be amiss in taking hydro away from what we have and now being able to further the sites, the prime sites that we're talking about, which is 14, from a revenue side. It would really impede us to share the hydro with this particular venture.
I have something else.
Pardon?
I can add something.
Go ahead.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. So Peter, also in 2016, when there was discussions, there was no consideration of the zoning and the regulatory restrictions for that area. So that was done internally here, which probably was a mistake, but it would be a lot of work internally for staff to I don't even know if it would be achievable to work with Norfolk County, and then we're put into a conflict. You know, we would require a peer review because we also regulate that area. So being in a PSW and hazard land, and then also within our regulations. So yeah, I feel there's nothing against the Cooks, but you know, and they also weren't able to give us very concrete business plan. And you know, it's going to be viewed as our venture because it's inside our park, and it will negatively impact, the view of the public will be, if it's not run properly or poorly, it's going to reflect poorly on us. And we just feel that it's not, we don't want to even get into that situation. Like when the board questioned and asked about numbers, they really didn't know numbers. They didn't really have, at first they thought they would just run it themselves. So it'd be a reduced operating schedule. So, there's just a lot of things lined up that back in the day, yeah, the conversation before with the Cooks, they felt they had, it was going to be easy to put something in there. But as we dug into and looked at this actual venture, there's a lot of regulatory issues around it. So, and that was not discussed with them back in 2016. So I hear your point, but it doesn't make it right now. So
Go ahead, Ken.
So with that in mind, then through you, the chair, through Judy, with if the Cooks were to present a professional plan, one that maybe was a little bit more satisfactory in the sense that gave us, comfort that they would actually run a business that wouldn't put us in a negative position, possibly pay for the cost to increase, the capacity to a 3-phase system. Would it make it more sense for us rather than to simply say, no, we don't support this application, or but we would support the application if it had the requirements or met the requirements such as this, and this, and put it back to them that, you really didn't come together with a professional presentation. And for that, we can't support something that puts us in a negative, precarious position.
You respond to it?
Well, I think, I have talked to them and they wanted to, bring their proposal one more time to the board and see what the board of directors felt about their proposal. But from a staff level, we don't want to support that kind of activity in the park. Benbrook, there is one similar, it's identical to what they want to put in, from my understanding, and that's Niagara Region, and it's actually in a day use park, not with a campground. I think it would be disruptive for a campground with the noise and the activity. It might fit better in something that was just not a campground, but a pond that this activity happened during the day and it shut down at dusk or whatever. So
I guess just to rebut that, Judy, I guess I'm okay with the response. I just want to make sure the response is consistent with what, if staff's saying we don't support it because we don't think these two businesses would align, or they wouldn't align with our campers, then let's simply say that, rather than to say, well, you don't have the capacity or you can't get to, because I would argue and say, well, I'll pay for the 3-phase, or I'll bring that professional, report that you're looking for, business plan. I'm just simply saying either there is a solution there or there's not. And if it's simply, we don't want it there, then, let's not kick that around. Let's come back to them. We don't want that there because we don't feel that there's any way that your business and those current campers can get along together.
Thank you. Crystal, you want to speak? You had a question?
Well, I guess I'm just, I'm a little, unless I misread that, but I was seeing, was that 700 a month plus hydro over and above that, or that the suggestion of, well, maybe we can get them to pay for the 3-phase, I would think that that's a given, especially at a rate like that. I mean, otherwise it's going to end up costing us money to have them there.
yeah,
It's my parents' farm actually borders the Benbrook Conservation Area, so I know it well. I don't, I do think, I don't know that the noise in so much is an issue. I know they have looked at bringing back overnight camping there. There used to be overnight camping many years ago at Benbrook Conservation Area. I know that that's a thought moving forward. I mean, it certainly is an extremely active park now during the day. For years, there was hardly anybody that ever attended there. So I don't know that necessarily concerns me as much, but I don't really see the financial incentive for us to get involved in this at this point.
Mr. Chair, Crystal, that was, it was a flat rate that had been talked about, the $700. And you're right, it's not a financial benefit. It would end up costing us money. Even if we increase the rate, there's still the additional time for staff. And we don't have, a lot of staff there other than to run the park. But I hear what everyone's saying, and I did talk to the cooks and they just wouldn't take, you know, I'm not interested in your business proposal from me. So that's why it came to the board again. I think it's complicated. You know, it's not a simple start tomorrow or not. It's to get to start tomorrow, there's a lot of things that would have to be lined up for this to happen. And I just feel that my time and staff time is better put elsewhere instead of trying to do this, because at the end of the day, like it's been raised that it isn't a real financial gain for LPRCA from the numbers that we have. So
Are there any other questions?
Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'm looking at page 2 of the report at the bottom there. There's a statement in Judy's report on November the 10th, 2021. They made a statement, we would like to present our revised proposal to the board. And then the second sentence after that, if the board does not approve, we will stop pursuing this. So they've kind of left it up to the board whether they were going to continue on with discussions here. So I just wanted to point that out because I think that's an important statement.
Any other questions? Ken?
Sorry, and I don't mean to belabor it. I just, you know, we've got somebody that's trying to turn something into nothing, and nothing into something, I guess. And you know, maybe the quantum that they're looking at paying is not enough. Obviously, we're not interested in getting or entertaining any business that's going to come to a cost to Long Point, or as it, you know, directly to the taxpayers. I just want to position this properly, though, that, you know, if these people were to come with a business plan that was sound, that was professional, that said, we will cover the cost, so there's no cost to Long Point. We will cover the hydro, so there's no cost to Long Point, and there's no cost, or we will ensure that the capacity and transmission is there. Would this conversation be the same? Would we entertain that? And if that's not the case, okay. But I you know, yeah, $700 a month's not enough. Maybe there's a number there that would cover the cost, but I'm not just, I'm thinking, you know, there's a whole tourist aspect to this that brings a lot of potential dollars and people to the area. And, you know, before we just simply put our hand up and say, no, we don't support it, it goes against every fabric of my being. We're all about, you know, opportunity. And I would rather say to them, no, we can't support the application as it's been applied for. And here's the reasons why. If these obstacles or mountains, as you would, are ones that you want to climb, then bring us back a proposal that we can possibly look at. But today we can't support it for these reasons. I get the sense from staff, Judy, and what your comments are is we can't support it because we just don't want to support it. And if that's the case, that's okay. But that changes how I'm positioning my support or not support for this motion.
Peter, you got a question?
With all, thank you, Mr. Chairman. With all respect to Judy's comments about staff time and so on, would a different location be more acceptable? Is there a different park that would be more suited to this kind of activity?
I don't know of any that LPRCA owns, but you know, there's lots of quarries in the area that potentially, you know, private or whatever might support an activity like this, but yeah, I'm not sure, but nothing comes to mind from our locations.
Any other questions? Robert?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I understand what Ken is saying, so I'll be blunt. I'll put up my hand and say I'm not in favor of it, and I don't think we should accept the proposal. And my reason is that I don't think it fits the mandate of what the Conservation Authority is all about. We've just went through a revision of the Conservation Authorities Act that says that we're supposed to be, we have a certain mandate that we have to keep up. And there is a school of thought that we shouldn't even be entertaining campgrounds. So I don't go that far, but I think this proposal is a wonderful economic development driver for a municipality that wants to engage in tourist and recreation. But as a conservation authority, I don't think it fits our mandate. And that's why I put up my hand and say that I don't support it.
Val, did you have your hand up? No. Okay. Is there any other questions or discussion about this? I'm going to read the motion. So I have the motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives a report on water sports cable park at WNCA as information, and that the LPRCA Board of Directors support the staff recommendation to not proceed with a partnership with Amanda and Matt Cook for the water sports cable park at WNCA. Do I have a mover?
Sure.
Mike moves it. Robert seconds it. I'm going to call for the vote. Who is in favor? One, two,
Six.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, correct?
Plus you two.
Yes,
So
7. Those opposed?
do six. Six, three.
3, 4 opposed. So it carried. So moving along, we have a set of committee minutes from the Lee Brown Marsh Management Committee, September 15, 2021, page 13 and 14. And I'm sure everyone has reviewed those. And I have a motion. Are there any questions about it? I have a motion that the minutes of the Lee Brown Marsh Management Committee meeting of September 15, 2021 be approved as circulated. Do I have a mover and a seconder? Peter moves it. Tom seconds. Those in favor? That's unanimous. Carried. Then we have correspondence, number 7, which is number 15 and 16 of your agenda package. And did you want to say anything about that, Judy?
So Mr. Chair, this is a letter that came in from MECP, just noting that the second phase of the regulatory and policy proposal has been posted to the environmental registry. And this is related to, this was the next thing that was coming out for the regulations relating to municipal levy regulation and the different things related to the programs and services for the different categories. So actually I attended a webinar today, and we're taking a look at how it's impacting LPRCA.
Are there any questions about this correspondence from anyone? Hearing none, I have a motion that the correspondence outlined the Board of Directors agenda February 2nd, 2022 be received as information. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Ian and Crystal. Is there any discussion about this? Hearing none. Those in favor? Those opposed? That's good. So then we move to development applications, which is page 17 to 23. And I will ask
Lori.
Lori to speak to that.
Sure. Mr. Chairman, the staff have approved 17 applications that are in this report in front of you. And the recommendation is that the board receives the report as information.
Thank you, Lori. Are there any questions about these applications from anyone? Hearing none. I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives the staff approved Section 28 regulation applications report dated February the 2nd, 2022 as information. Can I have a mover? Mike and Stu. Is there any discussion about this? Here is seeing none. Those in favor? Those opposed? I don't see any, so all in favor. Then we'll move to the second is page 24 to 27. And Lori, again, can you speak to those? There's 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes,
five
we have 5 applications for the board's consideration. I would note that 2 of these are new cottage builds. 2 are municipal bridge maintenance that requires engineered drawings. And 1 is a set of wetland pond creations that are part of a DFO approved fisheries compensation plan for the Highway 59 Big Creek Bridge.
Thank you, Lori. Are there any? Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say staff are recommending these for approval.
Are there any questions for Lori about these applications? Peter, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to Lori. Lori, application 1922. We're not going to run into any surprises here, are we?
This is a county application, so I hope the county's not going to run into any problems with this application. The county has to have the contractor create these 2 wetland ponds in the marsh. It is in the marsh, so they are in the marsh near Highway 59. So we didn't look into that particularly, but it's in the marsh. It's not up on the headlands.
Are there any other questions for Lori? Seeing none, I will read the motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors approves the Section 28 regulation applications as per the staff report dated February the 2nd, 2022. Do I have a mover? Tom and Val. Those in favor? All those opposed? So it's all in favor. Carried. Okay. Then we move down to the general manager report. Judy, pages 28 to 29.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I've noted a few things in the report. Year-end audits underway with M&T currently. We have the Finance and Audit Committee scheduled for February the 18th. That will be at 9:30. And then we also have the AGM coming up on March 4th. So I just wanted to note those so people can make sure they have them in their agenda. And also we have scheduled a special meeting for the Board of Directors for February 23rd. Looking to have a day meeting at 9:30 a.m. And that will be a meeting to review the programs and services as part of their regulations requirements. And with now having the phase 2, even though it's out for comments, there may be a few small changes, but we'll have that also to consider as we're going through the different items on February 23rd. So that is actually positive. So we kind of know the direction NECP is going with the different ways to collect levy and the fees, etc. So the rest is just standard business going on with the different areas. And we did open our overnight campground reservation system February 1st. And we did have a lot of uptake on the first day with reservations. So that was very positive. And our seasonal campers applications will be going out later this week. But we're expecting to be fairly almost at full capacity even before the parks open. So that's very good news.
For your information, Mike and Judy and I had a little discussion about the annual general meeting. Can you maybe just brief the board on what kind of we have planned for that?
So we're planning to do the AGM again as a virtual meeting. When Zach and I were looking at the format earlier, I guess in this year and late last year, with the restrictions, we felt we would continue doing a Zoom meeting this year for the AGM. And for the February 23rd meeting, if the board agrees, we would like to possibly to have that as an in-person session, just because of the information we'd be going through. But if we don't have any objections to that, then February 23rd could be a meeting here in the office, and then we continue doing the AGM as a virtual meeting on March 4th.
Thanks, Judy. Is everybody clear on that? What we're thinking?
And no guest speaker.
So there'll be no guest speaker at the AGM, and we won't ask other visitors or dignitaries, whatever you want to call them, to come in and speak because of the fact of our COVID situation. So it's going to be a limited meeting. Unfortunately, we'd love to have it wide open for all, but we can't invite a whole bunch of people to come here and sit through it. Anyway, I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors received a general manager report for January 2022 as information. Do I have a mover and a second? Ian. Do I have a seconder? Val. Those in favor? Those opposed? Do you oppose, Crystal?
No, sorry, I was still busy just trying to figure out that permit and exactly what that was for there. So I just got distracted. I was in favor of the report.
Okay. So that's carried. Then we have the delegated permit approval powers and duties policy. Lori, were you going to speak to that?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the this report is to present a draft delegated permit approval powers and duties policy. The current policy that is attached as attachment number 1 was prepared in 2013 in order to implement an amendment to our regulation 17806 that allowed the board to delegate approvals to staff. That particular policy contains a specific list of types of applications that can be approved by staff, and they're minor applications. So the types of ones that we've been bringing to the board for approval didn't fit that list. So at the last meeting, Leanne Mothy presented our update on customer service and timelines for getting through the turnaround times for permit applications. And one of the things that was noted was the delays that some applications have because they have to wait for a board meeting, which can be up to 5 weeks delay. And so it was a recommendation of that report that we see to this particular opportunity to improve our turnaround. And as a result of that, at the last meeting, you directed staff to update the policy to delegate the powers and duties for all staff recommended applications for development. And so as a result, we have prepared the policy that is attached as attachment number 2, much shorter because it's no longer an amendment implementation policy. It gets right to the meat of delegating approvals and designating staff for that purpose. So this policy specifies that the general manager, secretary, treasurer, and the manager of corporate services are designated by the board to approve applications for which LPRCA staff recommend approval. That's the meat of the policy. It says also, if in staff's opinion, we think you should consider an application, even though we might recommend it for approval, we can still bring it forward to you. And we'll report to you on an information report, as we have been doing on the applications that staff are approving. And then it extends the powers to staff to approve permits for a duration of 24 months, which is the limit that's in the regulation. The regulation does allow the board to approve an application up to 5 years if it's that complex a situation, and that would have to come to the board. And it also allows staff to approve minor modifications to permits under the conditions that are listed there, with the same expiry date as the original permit application. So that's the extent of the policy, and it will, going forward, starting with our meeting on February 28th, if you approve this, we will be bringing all the staff recommended approvals as that first report that you heard tonight. We will approve them ahead and bring you an information report.
All right.
Judy will approve them.
Any questions for Lori regarding this explanation of the policy?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, Lori, so we will see the applications that come forward. Staff is going to approve them, but the same list of applications, those 17 that we did earlier, pages 17 to 22 or something, we will still see
Yes.
that was approved, just that we won't have to approve.
You won't have to consider them. They won't have to wait for you to consider them for approval. We would be this time bringing the 17 plus the 5 in one report to you for your information.
That's great, thank you.
Are there any other questions for Lori? Seeing none, I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors rescinds the policy to implement Long Point Region Conservation Authority's amended Ontario Regulation 178-06. Development interferes with wetlands and alterations to shorelines and water courses regulation, and that the LPRCA Board of Directors adopts the delegated permit approval powers and duties policy. Can I have a mover and a seconder? Ian moves, Robert seconds. Those in favor? That's carried. So the next item we have on the agenda is the Gypsy Moth Aerial Spray Program Update and Emerging Threat, pages 40 to 42. And Judy is going to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back in February of 2021, the Board of Directors approved an aerial spray program for gypsy moth for 1,150 acres of the LPRCA forest tracts. So we just wanted to bring back a summary on information because staff had some survey plots and we went out before and had the data, and then after this spray, staff has gone out and gathered using the same plots data to see the impact of the spray program. So in the report, they ended up doing 2 applications. Well, they were always going to do 2 applications, but because of weather, it did take 2 days each time to get the spray program completed. But from our surveys by staff, it's showing the properties are listed there, and it's showing the ranking. You already saw that one in 2020, the ranking, and they were basically all severe. And for 2021, this is on page 41, you can actually see that they have moved from light to moderate right down to nil to light. So staff is very excited to see those results. So we think it definitely did what it was intended to do. The other item that's in the report that we thought we would just bring to the board's attention, I think actually Mike actually flipped out an email a while ago about this, but it's the oak wilt. And there's been a lot of monitoring and research being completed on this. It is in the United States. It isn't into Canada yet, but I just wanted to bring this forward for the board's information that this is something that potentially could creep across the border into Canada, and it would have a devastating impact on our forests because we do have a lot of oak trees. Hopefully by the time it gets here, they'll have figured out some type of treatment that will be able to try to mitigate the impact of this. So, and also, we do have a partnership with the Canadian Soil Inspection Agency. They do come in and do surveys currently in our some of our forest tracts that have the higher concentration of oak. So we are, keeping on top of anything that's going on with the oak wilt through. There's different webinars, but also just working with them and seeing what kind of results. And so far there isn't anything in Ontario, but this is just something we wanted to advise the board of. So, and another positive thing was the board did approve up to $100,000 for the program, and we were able to secure some funding. So the programs, we spent just under 100,000, $99,685, and we did get some funding last year, 12,375. So the drawdown on reserves was 87,310. So we were able to offset that a bit with some research dollars.
Any questions for Judy about the gypsy moth program? Peter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Judy, did staff notice any collateral damage? It looks like great success on the gypsy moth, but was there any collateral damage from that spray program?
Through you, Mr. Chair, Peter, what do you mean collateral damage?
Was there any beneficial species that were also, drastically wiped out or population dropped down, or was it a very targeted type of product that was used?
It was very targeted type of product for the gypsy moth, specifically for the that invasive species. So yeah, it was I think it's BTK, it's called. So
Any other questions for Judy? Robert?
Not a question, Mr. Chairman, just a comment. It's very concerning to me, at least, and I'm sure everybody else, of this oak wilt situation and problem. For those of you that don't know, I do live on a farm and it's been in my family for, I think, actually 7 generations. But back when my great grandfather was running the farm, the birch trees all died. When my grandfather ran the farm, all the chestnut trees died. When my father ran the farm, all the elm trees died. And here I am, all the ash trees have died. And my son, hopefully, he can't be sitting here 30 years from now and say that all the oak trees died. It's sad to see a Carolinian forest deteriorate this way. I guess nature takes a course, but if there's anything we can do and at least make people aware to be watchful of this oak wilt disease, it sounds pretty serious to me. And they weren't able to stop the birch and the chestnut and the elm and the ash trees from all dying. Hopefully they can stop the oak trees from dying.
Thanks for your comments, Robert. Are there any other questions regarding the gypsy moth or the emerging threat report? Seeing none, I have a motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors receives a gypsy moth aerial spray program update and emerging threat report as information. Can I have a mover in a second? Crystal moves it, Peter seconds. Any discussion? Those in favor? Oh, sorry. Ken, you want to? Oh, no, okay. That's carried. The next report we have is on a timber tender, and that's pages 43 to 44. And I believe Judy's going to speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we put out a forest tender and the results are in the report. It was for the Swick King tract and it's 100 acres in Charlottesville Township. So when we opened the tenders, Townsend Lumber was the high bid at $172,375. But you can see that was just slightly over KR Developments of $125. So all 3 bids were excellent bids. They exceeded what we felt the top range would be, but as we know, it's hard to predict right now what the demand is for those various timbers. So it's good for us. And we're recommending the board approve it for Townsend Lumber at $172,375.
Are there any questions for Judy regarding this tender?
John.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yes, Judy, KR Developments. Have they bid on some of our woodlot harvests previously? And where are they located?
So KR Developments, to my knowledge, no, they haven't, that I recall, ever bid on our products. They have received our bid packages in the past. They are located, there's, I think between here and Elmer, they buy timber for a sawmill in that area. The operator or the person that would put the bid in, his name's Roger Good. I don't know him, but
Thank you.
Judy, I have a question. Did I hear that we had hoped that this tender would come in around $135,000, $140,000?
well, we always price it out based on sort of the market trends.
Yeah.
And we had a range between 135 and 150.
So 135 to 150 was the range. And we come in at 172,375. Are there any questions for Judy about this tender? Seeing none, I have a
Robert's.
Oh, sorry. Robert, did you have a question?
I was just going to move the motion that you're just about to read, I guess.
Oh, okay. The motion is that the LPRCA Board of Directors accepts the tender submitted by Townsend Lumber, Inc. for marked standing timber at the Swick King tract West Block, LP-340-22 for a total tendered price of $172,375. And Robert, you have moved it. I need a seconder. Stuart. No, sorry, Tom. Those in favor of this motion? All in favor, not opposed, that's carried. The next item we have is a quotation. Motor pool purchase lawn tractor, pages 45 to 46. And I believe Aaron's going to speak to that.
Thank you. The authority issued a tender for a diesel lawnmower, sending the tender out to 6 vendors and posting on the LPRCA website. The tender closed on January 26th with 5 vendors submitting bids. All bids met or exceeded the requirements of the tender. The 2022 capital budget was approved in the amount of $16,500 for this piece of equipment, replacing a 2005 lawnmower. Staff is recommending the board proceed with the bid of $14,000 for a 2022 Coyote CS2219 from Blue West Equipment. The $2,500 difference between budget and actual will be transferred to the internally restricted capital levy reserve. If anyone has any questions?
Does anyone have any questions for Aaron regarding this tender? Or this quote? Seeing none, then I'm going to read the motion that the LPRCA Board of Directors accepts the tender submitted by Blue West Equipment for the purchase of 1 diesel mid-mount riding mower, a 2022 Coyote, a CS22119 for $14,000, excluding HST. Can I have a mover and a second? Peter moves it and Ken seconds.
Stuart.
Oh, sorry, Stuart. Those in favor? That's carried. So then we move to the next tender. That is a 2022 motor pool purchase pickup truck, pages 47 to 48. And Aaron, you're going to speak to that one.
Thank you. So the authority issued a tender for 1 new 4x4 regular cab pickup truck. We sent it out to 10 vendors and posted on our website. The tender closed on January 26th with 2 vendors submitting bids. Both bids met the requirements of the tender. The 2022 capital budget was approved for $42,000 to replace a 2008 pickup truck. Staff is recommending the board approve the low bid from Stafford Motors for 1 2022 Ford F-150 in the amount of $43,872, with $1,872 difference being transferred from the internally restricted capital reserve. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Are there any questions for Aaron regarding this quote? Yes, Peter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On this tender, as well as the previous one, are we going to be able to take delivery of these items this year, or have you had any indication of that?
Through Mr. Chair to Peter. Last year, we took possession of the lawnmower within a decent amount of time before the park opened. However, the truck tender was approved last year in April, and we received the trucks in November. So we are anticipating with the supply shortage in chips and communication with the vendor that we should receive them a little bit more promptly this year.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Aaron, what did we do with the 2008 pickup truck that we're parking?
To you through Mr. Chair, the authority has numerous vehicles that have been identified that have been replaced last year and then will replace this year. And the general manager and the workshop supervisor will be holding an auction for surplus equipment.
Thank you.
Yes, Judy.
So in the past, we've used Brian's auction services. And I think they're located in the Cambridge area. So we have a few items, so we're actually reaching out to see if we can actually avoid having to move the items to their yard, and if we can do an online auction through them. But allow the equipment to stay in this yard because it's expensive to float different things that might not have the license or whatever. So we're looking at those options, but hoping to do something this spring, either way,
Good.
through an auction.
Do you know or have you heard about the government surplus auction that they have from time to time?
Yes.
Yeah, you're aware of that? Okay. Are there any other questions for Judy or Aaron about this quote? Seeing none. I have a motion, the LPRCA Board of Directors accepts the tender submitted by South Stoffer Motors for one new 2022 F-150 pickup truck for $43,872 excluding HST, and that the LPRCA Board of Directors approves the use of $1,872 internally restricted capital levy reserve. Do I have a mover and a second? Ian moves and Val seconds. Those in favor? That's carried. So we have on the agenda the long service awards.
That's right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is just to let the board know what staff members are up for service awards this year. We will formally recognize the staff at the AGM. So this is just really a heads up, but we do have staff ranging from 5 years all the way up to 35 years of service. So it's pretty impressive to see the long-term staff that we have that will be receiving these awards. So
It is impressive.
mhm.
Are there any questions to Judy regarding the years of service recognition program? Seeing none, I have a motion that the years of service recognition report be received as information. And I need a mover and a seconder. Tom moves it and Robert seconds. Those in favor? That's carried. Thank you all very much for your attendance this evening, and that concludes our meeting. And we are now adjourned. Have a good night.